All right. Call the meeting to order, and Madam Clerk, I believe we have 100% attendance of our commissioners, and we have 4 board members of the committee. Is that correct? How many people were appointed? 5. All right. Do we have alternates?
No.
Okay. All right. So we have a quorum, potential quorum of the committee, and I guess we'll go to number 2. So who wants to speak?
I guess I called the meeting, so
All right.
I'm happy to speak unless Peter wants to take the lead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Okay.
I guess one of the best ways, I think, is to kind of go through what we have,
Yeah,
and then maybe, fill in some blanks, fill in some priorities, fill in some more details and
that was
timeline.
sort of how I approached it after
Okay.
just reminding everybody that what we really do want to do is avoid duplication with staff activities. We said this is an advisory board. It's not a board that is going to do activities that would generally fall to the town manager, the assistant town manager, the different staff who are involved in a lot of the permitting and planning and things like that. So I would actually advise that at one of your first meetings, it might be good to talk to the staff and get a really firm list of what their responsibilities are that are dictated by their job description, but not just that, also the practice that has been in place for years, and then make sure that those rest with the staff, respect those responsibilities. Discussion's fine, but we don't want 2 people doing the same thing and tripping over each other and causing confusion.
We're actually in the process of conducting an orientation for the board members. We've knocked 2 of them out. We have 2 of them tomorrow and are working on the other one to do that. So we're working towards some semblance of what you're talking about.
That's
I
great.
think that's what we did.
That's great. I think that's
Two of them can bear witness to what we did.
Okay. All right. Then that's sort of one of the first things I wanted to say. And then, yes, I was actually, as Peter, looking at the individual 3502 powers and duties and thought that there should be some more specifics there of what we're envisioning the activities are. So, if we go to B and start with B. Peter?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Can I just say something about A?
Yeah,
And I hate,
of course.
it's not town, and we'll correct this later and formally. It's the Board of Commissioners. Town is too, anyways, what is the town? But anyway, go ahead, B.
Okay. The preparing a comprehensive long-term plan in the management of the inlets and management, protection, nourishment of the town's ocean beaches and protective dune systems. That is in and of itself very large and will be eternal. I mean, as long as Holden Beach exists. So I think there need to be some perhaps more discrete objectives in there with timelines of what to deliver in that first year.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
I'd like to just. I'm not a member of the beach board, but I'm the advisor to the board of commissioners, and so y'all just tell me when to simmer down if I start rambling off too much. But I had a comment that I jotted down on this one, and I'd like to offer up some comments as we go through it that may, in particular, may help to focus this one. That first would be, seems very broad and general. It's a great overarching mission statement. My comment was, define the long-term plan as articulated in there as it relates to the one prepared by ATN. You know, they do a beach management plan. So how does that mission statement ratchet in to the one that's prepared by your consulting engineer? That was my comment, and I just offer that up for dissection, discussion, or dispersion.
I agree. So if I were a consultant, I'd do as is first. What do we have? You know, collect all, do we have any plan? You know,
Annually, we do that annual plan.
Yeah, anyway, so grab that plan, and it might not be exactly where we're coming from, but it might be more toward, you know, engineering and not something else. So I would suggest that they grab whatever plan, land use plan has something in there probably too. So see what that does and see what approach that is, and maybe there's a different approach from this board versus more of an engineering approach versus this is a board of residents, people who live here, people who pay the taxes. They could have a different perspective on things. So I'd get what we have already, and then and from the guidance from the Board of Commissioners, what is a appropriate plan, right?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as well. We have years of the annual reports and plans. Okay, we're talking about trying to build a longer-term plan, which means sort of taking historical and trying to look out the next 10 years. What are we expecting in terms of activities and funding necessary between now and the next central reach? Because we know that we're going to do things. We're all focusing on 8-9 years out when we are anticipating the next big central reach-like activity. But there are going to be interim discrete activities with hot spots, with continuing to try to bolster our dune system, with plantings, with sand fences, how we're dealing with our walkways. Are we going to try and reduce the number of hardened structures? So it's coming up with, let's just say, what do we expect between now and the next central reach, not just how do we plan for the next central reach.
There's long-term and short-term plans.
Yeah.
And what are our goals, really? We should, that would guide, what are your guiding goals to what are you trying to accomplish? And if you really want to, what's the mission statement when you do a long-term plan? Kind of like the land use plan. That's how they do it. You have goals, and you have how you're going to get to those goals, and you have a short-term plan, you have a long-term.
Can I speak for a minute? I'm not quite sure when I can speak and when I can't. But anyway, I've thought about this a lot. I mean, there's the activities that David and Christy and the town management do, and then there's the activities that ATM does. And so the question is, where do we fit in? And I think that's specifically what we need to know. Where do we fit in? There may be some overlap a little bit, but we're not looking to do David and Christie's job, and I don't think we're looking to do the job that ATM does either. So there has to be some additional benefit that we can add, either with ideas or alternatives or whatever. If you read the Brunswick Beacon last week about the inlet dredging and what the Brunswick County Board of Commissioners are talking about, at least in the paper, what's in the press, then the question comes, how could, that's something that's imminent and something that's in the works, and I know our town management has been involved in that, so how could we help? How could we get involved and help with something like that so that we don't wait for Oak Island to get their permit and the 200,000 cubic yards of sand to go to Oak Island? So my question is, what unique benefit can we offer to those two groups that are already in place.
Well, but it's interesting because, and I've observed some other things about some of our other boards, and it isn't always clear to those boards, in my eyes, that they know who they work for. This board, if you're a powerful board, you've got some heavy brain power in this board. The Board of Commissioners, I think, can't speak for them, but for me, is looking for a team that reports, that keeps them advised. Just to them. You don't work for the town, you don't work for ATM, but you take all the information from the town you can get, from ATM, and anything else you can gather on your own, from observing, research, contacts you have, whatever you have, and keep this board apprised more frequently than we might otherwise have gotten. But you're an independent board advising this board. This board sets you up to be an independent work service to them because they are thinking 10 years out. We're not thinking this next dredging. We're not thinking what's happening there. We're thinking we got to have money, we got to finance managing the beach and the inlet, and these are major, major unknowns. That inlet, somebody tossed out a $4 million number the other day.
Right.
Ours would only be 500,000 or $1 million. Come on, we're lucky. That's a lot. We don't have extra money sitting around to do that. So we need help, and I think the board, I think each of us can comment, looks to you to keep us apprised of everything you can gather. Because from my perspective, it is the key issue for the health of the town. How we manage that inlet and how we manage our beach is, for the next 10, 15 years, is key.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, David tries to do that, and I think he does a good job, but he's running a town, right? He's the operations manager, so we need some help
I
to
mean,
get some details and a different perspective. Rather than the town manager perspective and government perspective, from a citizen, taxpayer, neighbor.
you could look at it as possible assignments that could be taken, that could be shared out as, look at other North Carolina beach community municipalities, what lessons learned apply, and not just our Brunswick neighbors, but all the way up. Even go outside the state, look at some other states. What are some of the beach communities doing that have to deal with constant renourishment? How are they affording this? Are they just lucky because DCers use them, so they're getting federal funding? Watch what's happening with state and federal, our state and federal laws and things. It's like you could amongst yourselves sort of divide up what you consider to be, this is my research area to dig into and to follow and to report back on. Something that I looked at too that you could be very valuable right off the bat is come up with a proposal. We have the reserve fund for sand, okay? But define sand costs. So what costs would you envision can legally be paid out of that reserve fund? Because we're going to have to define that. It's not just paying for the sand. There will be monitoring, studies, things like that. So what's the list of things that you say are legitimate to fund out of that reserve fund that we're building? But there will be times that money will come out of it that are going to be before Central Reach, the next Central Reach. Following specifically what's happening on Ocean Isle Beach with their terminal groin with the lawsuit, but from the standpoint of what they're mandated to do to make sure they're not harming Holden Beach. And so following what's happening with the lawsuit, if the lawsuit successfully stops that terminal groin, you'll be somehow getting information following it. But if they do get it, making sure that how they have to monitor Holden Beach and what's defined as harm that they have to fix before there's harm, and then everybody's saying, oh, this isn't really caused by things like that. Watching Oak Island activities, not just they're trying to get sand, everybody wants to get sand, but they put some rather funny sand out, from what I understand. And there's people who are wondering if there's a problem of it drifting onto Holden Beach. So things that happen when they're in a way upstream from us, is there a harm there? I don't think Sunset Beach has anything going on we really have to monitor. It's probably just our immediate neighbors. Thinking through something that's been started and stopped and started again, but try to think through and come up with a proposal of how a united Brunswick Beaches effort could be formed that could get something meaningful done at our state level in particular. How to improve on a committee that's in place that sometimes seems to be treading water, perhaps. Are there some better ideas of how to activate that group or add to that group that can help sort out better funding? Getting something for, it doesn't just have to be Brunswick, but for the whole state again. So, I mean, those were some of my immediate thoughts of things that could get done in the first couple meetings. That help?
It does, yes.
Hey,
Well-
you asked the question, can you talk? This is an open meeting.
Yeah, this is not us. This is meant to
Forgive me.
be.
Pat, all that does is scare the
I
hell
got
out of
it.
me.
No, why is it?
Because you mentioned several things
Yeah.
that's 30 years in the making that you just set a deadline on in two months.
No, I
And-
didn't set it to.
Well, I mean, you said the first couple meetings, we're going to solve
Well, no,
Brunswick County's beaches problems.
These are the things to get assigned in the first couple months that people take.
That's not funny.
It's that
funny to me.
people take tasks that will be their major responsibility. It's going to take a couple meetings to sort through just how you're going to operate, but then there need to be things divvied up. And
Right.
these deeper dive things have to be assigned out. It's not get it done in 2 months, David. It's try to get it arranged who's driving what in the first couple months, to then come back with, here's how long we think we're going to need to do this right, and here's how we're going to go about doing it.
In the context of developing a comprehensive
A
long-term plan.
long-term plan.
And I think what we're looking for is you to help us get in front of it, not always be behind it. Not finding out they're doing this, they've done it, they've made decisions. We'd like a chance to participate in some of those activities going forward, and the more you can help us stay in front of it by giving us leads and your thoughts and the people's thoughts about, because we're talking about major changes in the town could happen because of the beach and the inlet. Over the next 10 years, a lot of our people who live here probably couldn't live here if the wrong thing happens. If Mother Nature mistreats us, people won't be able to pay the taxes. So a lot of people who are here now will have to leave. That's a major change to the nature of the town. So, but the more you can keep us ahead of that, and I know we've got the talent to do that. You're already very much already engaged in it. You have your own position. You know people. So I think the board will value what you bring to the board, in addition to all the other things we get. To me, it's kind of scary about what the future could be for us. So I just want to make sure we're financially ready to do that, and we can keep this town as healthy as it is.
I promised I would come and listen. But you guys know me, I'm usually the one who's writing way too much stuff down. But I would like to see us develop, starting out, some goals that we all agree on, and I don't even know that we have that right now. But the idea that we have some very broad goals, that whenever something comes up, we can go back and look at those goals just like you would a land use plan. For example, I think we'd all like to see strong, healthy, vegetated dune from inlet to inlet. And then whenever something comes up, we would reflect back on that and say, we really want to see that happen, and this, whatever we're talking about, is going to impact that. We need to keep that in mind. So I'd like to see us develop some goals that we all agree on. And I'd also then like to see us look at things and determine what is the most pressing thing and time sensitive. And one of the things that to me is pressing and time sensitive is that you need to start planning. And I've read our beach reports. I read it every year when it comes out. I want to see a plan of how we're going to get to where we want to be 10 years from now. We're going to have another need for nourishment. We were impacted by Matthew. Are we going to make it another 10 years when it's paid off? I don't know. How are we going to do this? I want to see a plan for that. To me, that's important. I mean, we'll have other expenses in between there. We need to plan how we're going to cover that. To me, those things are important. David, I'm assuming you probably got a plan, and you could share it, or
A plan for what?
a 10-year plan of how we'll get to where we want to be in 10 years.
Well, I think the commissioners, set up their capital plan
Right.
with the last budget. I mean,
I know. but can
that's
we
what we got.
I mean, I've done my back of the envelope 10 and 10, and what do we need to do to get there?
Can't get to 10 million from here
I-
without doing some alternate
well, yeah.
financing
That's
strategies.
part of the reason for having a meeting in September that I asked for, about trying to come up with at least a 3 to 5 year plan for costs and revenues, because we have to grow our revenues. And I wouldn't say that it's necessarily your top priority at this point to come up with alternatives to revenue. It's figure out what our estimated costs will be between now and the next big central reach. That will be added on to the cost of a new central reach, but it's silly to think that we're going to sit for 10 years and not have to do anything.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
no,
And
totally.
so
Especially
that
then.
that right now
Yeah.
is to me a big gap. Is what are we thinking is going to have to be done? And I mean, we have a history, I'm sure, of we know that every X years we're doing something somewhere on the island that's roughly this many cubic yards of sand, and it's costing roughly this, and we pay this percentage of it. So do we expect 3 of those before the next central reach? That's what I mean about going into history. The annual cost of vegetation, the annual cost of fences,
Yeah.
and then there's the inlet costs.
Yes.
So that's what, we don't have even a short-term plan of what we're expecting in the next 3 years. And again, it's and maybe David does have that idea of, over the years we figure every 3 years we're doing this much, and then 3 years later we're doing this much, and 2 years later without a storm, and then throw in one hurricane, and here's how much. But that's the sort of thing that I think we need to have, is just an estimate of what we could expect to happen. And it's not going to be exact. It may not happen in year 2, it may happen in year 4, but this is the best guess of what to be prepared for. And then it's where's the money going to come from at that point in time, which is part of the, what we have to start doing at a town level, is come up with those sort of interim plans, financial plans, not just annual budget, but
Right.
looking out a little further. So we do that, you do the planning of, and here's what we're going to need just for the beach and inlet management, and then we're going to have to figure out how we do everything in the town plus
Exactly.
that with the amount of money we have.
I think with that would come, and Richard knows this part well, is contingency. So if this happens, what are the options we could take? What are the different programs that we could do to respond to that? And what if this happens? Or that? The more we know of that ahead of time, the more we can plan out forward and be prepared that when it does happen, we've already thought about it. I don't want to have the first planning meeting after it happens. And we know there's a lot of things can happen. The town manager knows how many different options there are out there. I'd like to see that spread of, okay, so what are the different things we could do? Besides sell something, buy, raise taxes, do this, do that, shut something down, raise something up. But what are those? So the board can, without having to go back and start all over again, already have your and all of your inputs in our portfolio of knowledge. To me, that'd be very valuable.
I'm just looking at my notes here.
Yeah, while you're doing that, I think, I agree with that. That you got, when we're talking beach and inlet, and they could kind of be separated for a period, but then there's overlap, obviously. And I think the beach is three parts. We've always discussed the beach as three parts, right? East, central, and west. And they all have, they all have their own needs, right? The three of them. But again, obviously, it's one beach. But so that's the level of detail. I don't think that we would want, right? The three parts of the beach and the inlet and how they intersect, and what has to happen in all of them.
So I hate to go back and bring something up that I just brought up a minute ago, but the inlet, the Lockwood Valley Inlet is on the table right now. They're out there, they're applying to the federal government, there's permits in place, there's application for permits in place. Is that something that the board wants to charge us to get involved in? And can we get involved in that?
I think that's a great question, because we have the Deputy County Manager, Steve Stone, in the article that referenced a couple of different things, within that article. And I think we need to tread and look at David and say, Mr. David, he made a statement, one statement in there, that the town of Holden Beach may not need the same. And I would look for David to give us some, where do we stand on this? And what kind of suggestions does David have on this?
Are you looking at me now?
Yeah, hi.
I think that this particular issue probably illuminates an operations and communications specific. That this is probably an instance of operations and who's speaking for the town. This is a specific thing, and not so much a plan or programming aspect. This is a traction point as a result of what we are and what we want to be and where we're going. And so this is a real good example of where it's a staff responsibility to bring that information back to the commissioners, exactly how that's transpiring. But to your point of what's going on with that, one, that article was in the Brunswick Beacon, and that guy used to cover Holden Beach, and
Stone?
No. The fellow that wrote the article.
Okay.
And what was reported in the paper is probably not the most accurate representation of all the details associated with that project and what's going on. I do know there are two pieces, there's really three pieces of the Lockwood Valley Inlet in play now, and tell me if I segue too far. The Murden, which is the split hull dredge that it's like a World War II landing craft, it is supposed to be used, the most recent survey is supposed to be used to clear about 6,000 yards out of the inlet proper, the inlet throat, across the bar. 6,000 cubic yards that gets into the funding of, through the state and the MOA, but it was about $30 a yard, and on the cost side of it, 6,000 cubic yards,
Near shore placement.
it's near shore placement, they're not even putting it on the beach. So,
Not yet.
as far as the town participating in that, I told them just we weren't interested in it. That doesn't do anything for us. The first thing that I'd like to make a point on is that putting any sand from the Lockwood Falling Inlet east of the inlet is not the most economical, period, regardless of who's paying for it, because the sand moves east to west. So when you put the sand on that side of the inlet, it's right back in the inlet, regardless if you're putting it on the beach or just up the beach. But irregardless, 6,000 yards wasn't worth it for us. The second piece of that is that the town has a permit, SDI 5 permit, to piggyback, if you will, or use our own permit to put sand from the Lockwood Falling Inlet on the beach. And it's from, it's the inlet, and it also includes the crossing. So we're one of 5, really 6 permit holders to a statewide permit. Oak Island opted not to participate in that effort when we were doing it back 3 years ago. They opted not to do it. Oak Island has since, I think this is totally my opinion, seen a lot of the success that we've had here with our programs, and is attempting to develop a master plan for that. They're paying like $3 million to get a master plan in place, and I think that they need $15 million. So they need sand. There's not 15 million yards of sand in the Lockwood Falling Inlet. There's probably 200,000 yards on an annual basis that can be harvested in the inlet, that makes a nice channel, that doesn't cause any ill effects to Ivy Beach. That's probably close to the sweet spot. It's a bare minimum. That's 2 things. I had 3 things. So Oak Island is now trying to become party to the SDI 5 permit that they can harvest sand from the inlet. Our concern is obvious. You take sand out of the inlet, especially if you go deeper or wider, which you need to in order to make it economical, because there's not the right kind of dredge in existence today yet to do those types of dredging on a large scale, similar to the 50-year project that Ocean Isle has, where they harvest sand from the Shalodian. So Oak Island is trying to get the permit. That was the one that was referenced in there. Joe, to your point about may not need the sand, I think that somebody got tripped up in their shorts on the reporting, and it was the 6,000 yards piece of it. That we may not need the 6,000 yards. We really don't care for that. But our position that we've articulated over and over again is that Holden Beach's annual erosion rate is on the order of 100,000 plus cubic yards a year. It might be 2. I'd have to check. And that our ability to take advantage of the Corps' biannual harvest from the inlet crossing, which is a beach placement sand, is critical to being able to maintain status quo. We're 200,000 cubic yards on an annual basis. When you net that away, we're now deficit at a 400,000. You can do the math real quick on that. So just to be able to keep afloat, keep our heads above water, we rely on the federal government to use the least cost method of disposal for the inlet crossing over there. So that's the 3A is the fact that this $4 million project that they're quoted on is the bigger, larger, dredge, deeper effort that the state would pony up some of the money on. It hasn't been permitted. You know, we have the shallow draft permit for that, but that particular project hasn't even been permitted yet. When you go deeper and wider, our concerns are, especially if you don't put sand on Holden Beach, what does it do to the east end of Holden Beach? So, you know, those are some of the pressure points that we're communicating with the county, and I don't know what got lost in translation of that the other night. You know, it's one of those things where I think that the county is trying to be proactive, but it may not be the right solution. But if they ask for a grant and they get a grant, then you have options. I understand that. You know, if you ask for a grant, then you have options. And so we're trying to work with them on it, but they understand our concerns. You know, we believe, and I think that the town's position in it may be something that we want to articulate in the comprehensive long-term plan as a policy statement, that the sand, instead of it being just David's, you know, trying to articulate to the popular, you know, to a captive audience that we want the sand, that's the type of policy statement that we can hang in a comprehensive plan that says town supports inlet maintenance with on beach placement on Holden Beach due to these types of concerns. You know, we think it's going to wash the east end of the beach away. So I think that's a long answer to your question.
I think that's a wonderful idea, you know, because when you communicate, one process of communication is you're trying to convince people and maybe trying to say the wrong thing because you're trying to do the wrong thing. But the article itself lent itself to the 200,000 cubic yards of sand, which we all know is our sand. And that, but yet the statement's made in there about, well, they may not need it. And that. So that's really an incorrect statement. I think we all
I wouldn't say
understand.
it's our sand, but that's another whole, that's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
discussion that has to
yeah.
happen.
Right.
My takeaway is Oak Island master plan, sounds like what we're talking about. I'd see what they're doing. Mr. Stone does understand our position, even though it was reported incorrectly, correct?
Absolutely.
And there's multiple, you know, David just went through, there's 3 at least things on the table as far as the inlet and dredging and getting sand from it. So, you know, do we have a priority? I think we do, obviously what we did.
And I forgot. There's
I was gonna say,
there's
can
number
I say
4.
something?
There's number 4.
Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I like this.
Yeah, so, you know, we could prioritize where we say we play, you know, where we want to, you know, like we did, what was it, 2 years ago, where we paid the...
That's the 4th thing.
Yeah, can I say
Yeah.
something? So I think to your point with your question was, you know, do we want to get behind this and say one thing or another and make a statement, and then we went back around to people communicating, and I think the part that hasn't been said is that, so if it comes down to a sharing, which that word has been used, right, and there are 3 projects on the table, well, the 6,000 for $30 a cubic yard didn't make sense. If it comes down to one of the 2 municipalities getting the other projects and them being divided, you're looking at one municipality paying about 1.3 for that deepening and widening project, where historically when we've done the other, it's like 84,000.
We'll let Oak Island do that.
Yeah, so we don't want to be the ones standing there going, hey, we're behind this, when it's the 1.3.
And we want to be proactive, because whoever's proactive is going to get the other one.
Well,
Or, you know,
and we've communicated the 4th piece of that is that the Corps of Engineers is bidding out the SDI 5 biannual, is that every 2 years? Is that the right word? Biannual inlet crossing project. They're bidding that out now, and that's for where the waterway crosses the inlet, the north end of the waterway. The deepening project is across the outer bar. So that one hasn't been permitted yet, by the way. So this one is closer in, and we're standing there with our permit should, because the Corps is going to bid that out. You got to remember that beach placement, they use the least cost method of disposal. So, you know, there has been some request of the Corps to do a double bid to see what it would cost to put it on Oak Island, but I don't think that the federal contracting laws are going to provide for that. I don't know. But that's where we are when this, and this is now, that's happening now for this winter's kind of project. And, you know, we're standing there, there was an appropriation made in the current year's budget. The county knows that, you know, we have committed this year anyway to an evergreen type of funding mechanism to piggyback on the Corps sand whenever it becomes available. So we're standing there on the corner waiting to be picked up. You know, I mean, we're standing there waiting for the ride, and others aren't in our position. Doesn't mean that we're, you know, the car's going to come by, not going to come by and splash water on us and stop at the next corner, but we're ready, and the county, along with the state, knows that we're standing by with, you know, the money in our pocket ready to execute.
How long is the permit for? The permit,
Well, the federal authorization is it's a federal authorization. It's forever. It's part of the Rivers and Harbors Act. But our permit is it's like 5 years. But we haven't ever had to exercise it yet, because whenever we piggyback on it, we've been able to do it in the federal footprint.
So the question is, who decides? The county's involved, the state's involved, the Corps is involved. When we're standing on the corner, who decides whether they pick us up or not?
May I speak?
Yeah.
I know I don't get to speak very often, but if you'll allow me a couple minutes, I'll share something with you. The most important thing hasn't even been mentioned, in my opinion. Politics. I want to give you a summary of where we are. Do you know where your state senator lives? Do you know where your House representative lives? Do you know where Mr. Stone lives? Do you know where the power of the county commissioner is? The power of the group of county commissioners. If you don't, you're not doing your job, because that's where the decisions are made. This weekend I had 2 of our legislators in my office, quietly, with shorts and sandals on. Behind closed doors, discussions are held and reality is discussed. And look how many votes we have. Look how many votes Southport and Oak Island has. That's what we're battling. Not this administration of commissioners, but the previous one. Mike McIntyre was available for us to hire to help us get the monies. The then board chose not to hear him out or entertain or consider hiring him. He got more money for this town than anybody in the history of this town. He's not a congressman anymore, He's in private business in a law firm out of Raleigh, but his concentration is doing what we need to have done. That is representing us, in my opinion, in the discussions, in the committees and so forth on the state and national and all the core meetings and whatever we would ask him to do. We didn't do that. So now we find ourselves out politicked or on the short side of power battling Oak Island. We can have all the plans you want to have and all the dreams, but the reality is those that are going to make those decisions are going to find it very difficult to support us. Now, what the resolution to that problem is, I don't know. But the longer that we allow the power to continue to grow at Oak Island without some kind of fighting back or some kind of representation, the more difficult it's going to be to overcome. And without saying too much more, I just wanted to make sure all of you in the room are aware how weak we are politically. The governor, I don't have a clue where the governor is on, I've met the governor and all that, but as far as having any hope of any help from the governor's office, maybe some of you know the governor more intimately than I do, but I don't hold out any hope from the governor's office. So whenever you talk with our Frank Eiler and those others that represent us, keep in mind that we are having to be very humble because we are not in a position of power, and that's just the way it is, and the pendulum is still swinging in their direction. Common sense, I think, is on our side. Politics, I think, is on their side right now. So just know where we are.
Do you have any advice? I mean,
The only advice is you have to be involved. You have to have relationships. You have to, whenever you go to meetings, you have to talk to people, have an understanding and communication ability with those in power. And that's what it's all about.
That's why I was asking, who makes the decision? I'm trying to get to where are the decisions made.
Well, I don't know how to say it any better.
Back
No, I got it. I heard you.
Back room. It used to be the men's room, but there's enough women now, so it's back room.
Not so much.
I need to excuse myself.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree, Alan, but the bottom line, we still only have 500 people that,
We have what?
500 voters, or, 400 voters probably, that either we could pay somebody to, but we still, he's standing on a very, very small platform of a couple hundred people, that's the problem.
Well, I understand and I don't disagree with what you're saying, but the problem we've got is where are we going to take a stand and where are we going to do something
Yep.
to, on the political side, and I'm not saying I don't like our senator and so forth. I mean, I call them personal friends of mine of decades, but it's a tough position that we're in. And one more thing that we keep talking about Lockwood Folly, and Pat, you know where I'm going to go to. The west end of Holden Beach, it hadn't been that many years ago that channel was right up at where those houses are sitting right now, and you're going to see it again.
I remember.
It's retreating people.
Oh, I remember it
You
clearly.
haven't been down there. We've seen some significant retreat in the past year,
Yeah,
for whatever reason.
and that cut through from the marsh to the inlet is open on the severe tides right now. And there's a lot of change happening down there, so we need not only be thinking about Lockwood Folly.
Good point, excellent point.
I agree.
But anyway, I probably talked more than I should have. I'll be
No,
quiet.
we appreciate
Good.
your perspective very much. But, I mean, as I said, I have been hoping that we could do something that would have more of a United Brunswick Beaches effort that could be more persuasive at the state level. You're basically saying that we actually need to act as just ourselves.
Well, no, I'm saying whenever I go to Raleigh, and I've been to Raleigh a bunch, when I go to Raleigh, Ocean Isle is there, Oak Island is there, and they're not there just with the mayor. They're there with the crew of representatives and committee members and so forth. David and I, and sometimes one or two of our staff people, are the only ones there at Holden Beach. And I don't mean as a slap. I'm just telling you that's just the way it is. Is that true, Dave?
Yes.
And it's a tough nut to crack, and it's very offensive to me when Ocean Isle is sucking out of the Sloat Inlet that way, and Oak Island's wanting to suck out on the far left, and we're in the middle. What's that thing that's going to happen?
Pretty much appears the only thing, you know.
It's offensive to all of us, so the question is,
We're going to be going down the drain.
how do we get our arms around what to do about it?
Yeah.
And how can we assist with that?
So you say
I have no
that,
problem with going to Raleigh, but, you know, as a concerned citizen, do I have any
It's
impact on that?
It's a growing thing. It's like, you know, all these little local meetings and county meetings and district meetings and all that, and core meetings and all of it is just kind of you gotta go, and one meeting leads to the next, and then the next meeting you go to, well, I remember him, I talked to him, so and so, you get these relationships going, so whenever you call one of these power offices, whether it's the court or whoever, you have relationships, you can talk to people, and that's the only way I know you can keep your foot in the door, because right now we're in a hard place to be.
you mentioned that Oak Island and Ocean Isle, they go there and they have,
Regularly.
and they have a committee.
Well, they're not necessarily an organized committee, but,
Who are those people?
well, David Smith is the foremost one from Ocean Isle, Daisy, and then one or two of their commissioners. Who else from Ocean Isle, Daisy?
Bob and then Dean, you know, they
Dean
take
Walters,
turns.
yeah.
It's a core group, but then there's a rotating cadre that.
So it's
that-
elected
that's-
officials and citizens.
And most of them have been involved with the political scene for decades. So they have an ongoing relationship, but they keep putting the fertilizer on, so to speak, and it's very impactful.
So how do we come up to speed on that? How do we, as Holden Beach, come up to speed on that? How do we get, or how does
People
the
like sitting around this table start doing these things like the others are doing. I mean, that's just the long and the short of it.
I think we need to understand when the dates are, when the meetings are, and
Well, I think it's beneficial to think about setting up a proper, let's just say, committee that is willing to go. This isn't fun. This isn't
It's a big
It's
fun.
not fun, and
It's
it's
not.
expensive.
It is.
Time and money.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
It's when you go to Raleigh,
Mhm.
it's an all day or two. I mean, Raleigh's 3+ hours regardless of how fast you drive. And then you gotta, you know, you're either up at 4 o'clock in the morning all day, or you go up, spend the night, come back. So I mean, it's an investment in time. I mean, it takes time.
I believe the first step is this committee, but I think there's other steps, and I appreciate, I definitely agree with you, Mr. Mayor, that there are other steps that we could take, including the board, you know, being more involved, and maybe contracts that could help us out.
And I want to say one more thing about something a little different. We we, the town, and just like Pat was saying, you know, you're gonna have emergencies, you're gonna have little storms and so forth as we go. But the big eye opener in my recollection of the town's reaction to storms, I can't remember what year it was, but we had a storm and Gay Atkins, I think, was on the board at the time. But anyway, the town didn't have any money. The beach strand was a muck. Houses were overhanging into the ocean and so forth. And the town had to borrow, I think it was $3 million. I think that was the right number. Does that ring a bell?
I remember,
You
yeah.
remember what year that was? But anyway, it was a crisis. And
I don't think Gay's been on the board since like the early 90s, so.
anyway, the town borrowed all that money and then eventually worked out of it. But the way the town did that, they had to literally mortgage all the town's assets. I mean, the net worth of the town is down. I mean, that's basically what
Was
took
Mike
place.
Morgan the town manager then?
I swear, I can't remember. All my years are just, but anyway, that was the end result. And then the other thing is, whenever bad things happen like that, even if the government's gonna help you, the money's delayed. So you got to operate until you get that money back, and I know David did a great job in recovering monies for us, and even got a little extra, but, there's ways to get through the difficult times, and what's unfair about it, none of us in our bridge know when the storm's coming and how much it's gonna cost us.
But we do know it's coming.
We know it's coming,
And that's why,
and several of them are coming.
Yeah, you're right.
yeah, that's why the beach communities mean for their general balance fund is 100%. Because they know, you know, we know it's coming. And we gotta have some money out on hand until David can get to, you know, the replacement.
Yeah, I want to speak to
print
that.
some more.
I want to speak to that just a second. And I'm not disagreeing with you. And Dave, you correct me if I'm wrong, because we've talked about this numerous times. You know, Holden Beach is pictured in the public eye in many places as having a very low balance of funds for emergency purposes. Tell me if I'm wrong, Dave.
Yeah.
And there's another town not too far from us, beach town, that gets praised for having such a wonderful balance. But what the public doesn't know is how they do their books versus how we do our books. So, investigate before you assume that somebody else is better off than you are. And it has a lot to do with your sand money and some other things. So Holden Beach is not as bad off as you may think it is in the reality of it.
Well, one thing's really clear, that Oak Island has, for many years, Oak Island's been kind of on the quiet side. Well, they're not quiet anymore now. So they're definitely amping up, you know, to be present. And so we're gonna have to.
Well, they've got so many problems with sewer,
I know they
sand.
do.
They're drowning over there and the people are screaming and they got a mess.
But look at the building going on over there.
That's right.
But I'm wondering, is there anything we can do that would, can we kind of capitalize on some of their problems by making sure that, okay, they may have the political power, but can we make sure that we've got the money? For example, can we make sure that we kind of capitalize on their problems? We make sure that we have the permits, we have the money, we're
ready to go.
ready to go.
And the town's done a good job.
We're shovel ready right now.
Okay, you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
It's kind
I mean,
of,
but that's the kind of policy statement that I think is real easy to write. You know, it's the policy of the town to be shovel ready when contingencies come along, opportunities come along, because you know, it's very easy to say that we want a long-term plan in place, but part of long-term planning is be opportunistic
Right.
when that arises. And I can tell you that, it's just been my experience here that our strategy, although it may not be so well articulated except in our beach management plan, has been for our long-term, our big Central Reach project. We just did that. Whatever's going to happen with the 50-year project, whatever that
We can
might
never
be, and
get
then,
them here.
and then to take advantage and be opportunistic with when these other projects come along. The problem with being able to be opportunistic is that it's like a tick. We've been like a tick on a hound dog, and that hound dog is the Corps of Engineers. When they come by, we latch on and take advantage of. Not to be gross, but I hate to communicate that our strategy. That's what our strategy has been, but that is what we've been, a parasite on the back of a larger critter, and I think we've done that fairly well,
Now we got more competition.
But now we got more competition.
I think we're aligning our goals with the Corps of Engineers goals, right?
Whenever possible, but part of our strategy also has been the whole reason for us being involved over time with crafting the language that provided for cost sharing with the memorandum of agreement through the Shallow Draft Inlet Fund, was in case that core effort crapped out, and so that we have our own standalone permit that basically replicates the Corps' authorization in the inlet, and that's where we are, and that's why we're shovel ready today.
Plan B, right.
Yeah, it's for Plan D and Plan C.
And then the other part is what I think we started to do. We need to, focus again. We used to never have any money. I wanted to show that funding in there to show them that we not only have, we have the finances, we have the permits, but we have, the sitting there waiting. So we didn't have to have a special meeting and move funds around. And to me, that shows a lack of planning, and that they might not appreciate that. But
So when I'm listening to you, David, does it seem that one of the first things that this board could do, this new board could do, would be to take all these different things you said about the inlet, the need for this much sand to stay stable, that sand goes from east to west, so we are the logical place to put the sand on the beach, and write an inlet sort of policy for the town that can be our formal document that you have to show, rather than just, as you say, David saying it time and time and time again, that there is a formal document that has the town stamp on it, that this is our policy for our inlet management.
I actually think it would not take much effort, especially in the context of our current beach monitoring and management plan. The engineer is 10 weeks into crunching and punching the data, because we do an annual beach monitoring survey, to either wait till that comes out in October or to provide him direction, orientation with the beach board, and allow those types of issues to be articulated in that beach management plan. I think that, now that's just me spitting out, with it coming to me here in this forum, but I don't think that it would be a far stretch to evolve that beach management plan into a comprehensive plan. I may be wrong there in what all that takes. It may take some dialogue with ATM and the Beach and Inlet Board, but, I mean, that would be up to the commissioners what they want to see. But let me pull back from that. I wouldn't want to delay that document, and here's why. And there's one reason, and the word starts with an H, hurricane. Whenever that document comes out and we have a hurricane, the first thing that FEMA wants to see, they want to see our plan, our permits, our program, and we hand them that document. And they go away, and while they go away, we're doing a survey to see what our damages are. When they come back, we go, this is what we lost. And they go, okay. And we get a project work file done from it. So I would like to have that document, and I believe it's September, October when the deliverable is set. So I wouldn't want to delay it much, and it may be that the board receives that annual plan and then recharges, the engineer to evolve that with, in some type of construct with the Inlet board. And I'm just thinking off the cuff here, y'all. I mean, if it's irrational, that's the way I do sometimes.
That's one more reason, one more group that's looking, could use this planning, obviously, after a hurricane.
Well, I was just wondering if there was if it would be beneficial for the commissioners to come up with a policy that they adopt, like we've been discussing about the inlet, just so that they've got that in place. Communicate it to whoever you need to.
That inlet is addressed in that plan, in some context, as a SBI 5, as a
Right. I know, it's just kind of buried in there. You could,
Yeah.
maybe if we had a separate one and we highlighted it, that this is really
both inlets,
important
correct?
to us. Well, yeah, and this one in particular, just because it's changing. It seems like it is, the winds are changing.
And our argument is, right, east, we don't mess, just like, we don't mess with Ocean Isle, they should,
Right.
so.
Right.
Well, and the county voted, correct? The county did vote to support Oak Island's bid to join SDI 5, to join that permit, right?
They
That's what the-
endorse the application, I
They
think.
endorsed the application,
And
right?
that's the permit you're talking about?
Do we have any idea how long those applications take?
I think they expected to hear something back in like the July timeframe, the last we heard.
And that's the permit you're saying we have as Plan B? Okay.
Yeah.
And who makes that decision? The county?
I'm sorry.
Who's the permitting body?
That's actually a federal permit and a CAMA permit.
So-
Yeah, they've got to get a federal permit. Yeah.
So let's assume they get it, they're in the same position we are.
Yeah. Well, I can, if you don't mind me, and I know that Fran's well aware of public meetings and public records law. I'll just read you the consultant engineer's opinion on that. I think it's very directed to the point. So I saw this in the paper. Let me know if I can help. Lockwood Folly Inlet crossing this winter should still go to Holden Beach. That's the one that we normally see. And what Johnny thinks, Johnny is the engineer for Oak Island, Johnny thinks his sharing is really stealing. The Corps should continue the Holden Beach project as it has been working. It is needed and it is least cost. As you mentioned in our meeting, Oak Island needs way more sand than the Folly has to offer. So, I think that the engineer, consultant engineer, he's got it, and with very little massaging on our annual document, we can get to a comprehensive plan. We're going to need to pull some finance stuff in, and that may be a function of the working session that the Board of Commissioners has in September, I'm assuming. So, anyway. Did I answer your question? I'm sorry. I don't know if I did or not. Okay.
I'm just concerned.
Yeah. But, yeah, the inlet is, it's a section in there, and, if there's a desire to tease that out and define it as, one leg on our sand stool, if you will, that information is there, and all it takes. I'm guilty of using all it takes. That language gets you in trouble sometimes, but I'm pretty confident that with very little effort, it can be elaborated on and turned into a policy statement.
And there you go, there's,
It's already there.
It just needs to be organized.
Yeah. And maybe it's-
But it's,
yeah,
Slap
it
back.
can be a deliverable.
right, but
It can be a priority.
to David's point, what we need at a time. To David's point, communication, we need to be careful.
So if that's a first priority, okay, I mean, that sounds like it's a good first priority. The mayor has thrown out the need for more participation by Holden Beach. A proposal of how that could be, could also be a priority that could then get decided, this is how the town wants to move forward. And that would have to be a sort of a how many, who, what's it gonna cost, what's the objective, the steps that it will take. And people that want to do it have to be committed.
Can we start today with, one of my problems is patience, but can we start today with a communication from Christy and David and Heather, Alan, to all of us about when, I mean, they're already in the loop. They know when these meetings are taking place, when, there's county stuff taking place, when there's state stuff taking place. Communication to us so that we can start saying, hey, this would be something maybe one or two of the commissioners could go to, or one or two of us on the board could go to this meeting. I mean, we're going to get tapped into what's going on locally and with the other islands, but you already know what the schedule looks, a lot of what the schedule looks like. And if you can communicate that to us, maybe we can help, or, or encourage the commissioners to get involved too.
Yeah, we can get some dates out. I know just what I know
You had
right
spoken
now.
to me about one in the fall. I can't remember if it
In
was a
November,
two-day one.
but since then, like daily updates, right? The 29th of August is going to be the memorandum of agreement meeting in New Bern that's held quarterly, and then I believe that the next Brunswick Shoreline Protection Committee meets September 19th. So those are two that I know are on the calendar.
Just to throw it out there as far as the Board of Commissioners, maybe we, focus on certain things, just like the government does up in Washington, they're on these subcommittees, and they have a chance to be a subject matter expert from their, that level. Just throwing it out there for thought.
Say it again, Peter. I missed it.
So right now, there's 5 commissioners. Do all 5 go to this meeting, do, a representative group, and then, they're focused on the beach and inlet, and then another group is, one or two are focused on another, one of our, parking, for an example, another park, something else, but, so we can also be.
Right, I'm talking about all of us.
Yeah, so the board can also be a focus, and put the time and effort to be a SME, a subject matter expert.
Alan, when you go to Raleigh, it's not just for beach issues, right? It's also for like transportation and everything, right?
The more involvement you have, the more credibility you got.
Okay.
Yeah.
School start dates. Yeah.
How often do you guys go to Raleigh?
There's no set schedule, just, you get a phone call, hey, so-and-so's breakfast tomorrow morning, or tonight, or whatever, or
Yeah, the General Assembly, although it is a system of governing and law setting, there's a lot to be said about the organizational communication on issues. You know, you may get a phone call this afternoon that says there's a bill coming out tomorrow that's going to take all of your occupancy tax. If you don't, you need to get up there and speak. You know, again, I'm not exaggerating. That's the way a lot of times those things happen, and I think that, you know, it illustrates a need to have. Gosh, I hate to keep coming back to a lobbyist, but yeah, we got to be involved in it, but there's some perspective of covering all of that stuff in Raleigh a lot. And it's not just Raleigh too. There's dredging specific, you know, there's national organizations that, you know, are based in Washington, the Waterway Association, and we can get that information to you on some of those organizations.
Right, I could hear what Kristen was saying, except the dates,
Right.
so I didn't hear what kind of meetings those were.
It's nice to have someone there daily that gets all of the communication that is disseminated amongst the representatives, so that anytime something comes up pertaining to your town or county or whoever you're with, if you have somebody there that can make you aware of the status of things.
Do Ocean Isle and Oak Island have a lobbyist, if you will, or someone who is there?
I don't know how to answer that. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I will tell you that other towns in the state do. Absolutely do.
We're really weak at the federal level now because our congressional district stretches all the way to Raleigh. And it's a little strip, and it's just a little piece down here on the coast. And our congressman is a farm boy from Clayton, and
We're way down the list of priorities.
we're way down there.
I like him, don't get me wrong, he's a nice guy, I like him,
Right.
first name basis, all that, but he's got a lot of people shouting at him from places other than coast of Brunswick County.
Yeah.
So am I hearing the board that the comprehensive plan and how we've kind of discussed it here is one? I mean, is that from here?
With the inlet section, the first thing to try to bat out. To have a policy on the inlet that makes clear the commitment to get that sand for the east end, how much we need, so that Holden Beach stays here. Because that's basically what it is. If you want Holden Beach to remain, this must happen. And it's least cost and makes scientifically the most sense to put the sand here.
And you can, West End, we can justify by mentioning the West End.
We needed the easements on the east end, right? That's in this year's,
Noel's working on it.
okay.
I mean, that's,
That we needed Plan B already.
Somebody needs to tell me when it's time to go to number 2, or number 3, rather.
I'm still going through in my mind trying to form I'll just call it a citizens committee to help, to have more presence in Raleigh. And this is not an easy thing to do, and I was just wondering, Alan, if you would have more thought on the characteristics, the commitment, the types of things that they would have to do, so that, you know, people have a little bit more in front of them before they jump in and say, I'm willing to do that, because you can get into things like this and then find out, I absolutely detest this, this is not what I thought.
Absolutely. But there are two kinds of people that we need to have,
Mhm.
not in order of priority, but you need, there's sometimes when you go to Raleigh, you want numbers of people. They don't have to know to do their squat, they don't have to say anything, they just have to fill a chair. You need to have some names that you can call and say, hey, we're going in the morning, you know, they come on. And then you gotta have those that whenever they go, that they can speak to the subject, and speak to those that are there and have some type of relationship
Right.
within the group. And that doesn't have to be a big number of people, because you don't want dozens of people speaking and maybe some misquoting facts, and then it all just water kind of nothing. But so the two kinds, you know, those that can fill a seat, they don't have to be obligated to go 10 times a year or anything like that, but just upon a need of people, numbers, that they'd be willing to be called and spend the day or something. And then you need to have those that are committed, that will go to all these local meetings possible and kind of be seen, kind of be a face to be remembered type of people. And it takes a long time to get that.
It does. I think this group is committed to a lot of the local, you know, to start getting involved in a lot of the local meetings and being present and being, I mean, I haven't asked them, but I'm thinking that we are.
We brought it up. We brought it up during the orientation.
Yes, exactly. You know, participating in local stuff. But if you just think about how this, you know, look at the monthly meetings we have every month, right? Commissioners are here, but pretty much, unless there's a hot topic, you've got the same core group of people out in the audience every month. Those people, they'll participate. I know a lot of them. I mean, they'll go to Raleigh, they'll fill a seat. They would be happy to do. I mean, you know, maybe not with 1 hour notice, because, you know, it's hard for them to mobilize. But I think we have an active group of concerned citizens on this island that would participate if we asked them to. I think we just need to, you know, do it.
So did Ocean Isle, you don't know if they ended up hiring Mike McIntyre?
I don't know.
It seemed like when that came up back then, that if we didn't hire him, they would.
Yeah, and the last time I talked to Mike, I asked him how busy he was, and he didn't say he was booked out, but he was very busy. I don't know whether he'd take us now. I don't know. I haven't asked him.
I think we're pretty clear. I don't know. We'll get there.
So then should we schedule to meet with Fran?
Now that we've talked about it, I mean, I hadn't invited him up or anything, but probably it would be a good thing by the next meeting that you have. It might be something good to get him to come up in August timeframe. And that way, you've had your David interpretation and David Christie interpretation, your windshield tour, that kind of thing, and then get Fran to come up and do the professor level
Yeah.
kind of thing. I mean, that would be.
It might be good to consider him on the town agenda if the commissioners would approve it. Let him come and be the town meeting to bring the public up to date. And that afternoon, maybe meet with them so that we don't have to pay him for 2 trips, that kind of thing.
When's the next
It's a
town meeting?
scheduling.
August
It's a
10th?
scheduling. It's a scheduling thing.
It's the third week, I think. It's the 21st, yeah.
Right, our next meeting's scheduled the 21st at 4th, so it's not that much difference.
We've actually got some monitoring surveys that need to be done, and maybe we can just get him to come up, spend the night and that kind of thing. He can kill two birds with one trip.
Our meeting. I guess if the opportunity presents itself for him to come before our next meeting, if he's gonna be here anyway.
I don't know what his schedule is.
Okay.
I'm just speaking for somebody without knowing. I was thinking that those meetings were gonna be on the same, near day after one another.
Okay.
That might be convenient.
Did something come out of all of this then?
I think so.
Yes.
Okay,
No, I definitely think so.
right.
Kind of gives us a starting point. You know, I think that was the one thing the one thing that I think that I want, I kind of, when you brought this up in the town meeting, this is one thing I kind of wanted, because I'm sitting there thinking, okay, we need to talk, we need to talk with the town. We did our orientation, but, I always believed in teamwork, and that, it takes everybody kind of looking down the road, setting an objective, and everybody kind of working to get there. And so, I think that there's been some really good points that truthfully, I hadn't even thought about. Politics. I mean, I know there's politics and everything. But I do know from experience, when I would go to, a big meeting, I always made sure that all the important people knew I was there and knew who I was, so that when the next meeting came up, I could walk up to them and I didn't have to say, "Hey, Mr. Smith." I could walk up and say, "Bill, how are you?" And he may have to look at my name tag and say, "Oh, I'm fine, Mike. How are you?" But at least we had a conversation. So that's, I can see that, where that can be a very important part of where we're headed and what we're wanting to do with the town. And I think that you have the members on this board that'll be willing to do that. And during my orientation drive, I was impressed. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I thought the sand, the fences and the vegetation looked really good. But David brought up the deal with the core about the inlet, the T inlet or whatever. That we need that. I read the beach monitoring report, and it looks like we've had that sand forever, and it kind of lends you to think that we're supposed to get it forever. But now, with Oak Island in play, I did sit down and read the engineer's presentation to the Oak Island Town Council on their plans, and then I sat down and I read their financing options. Now, a lot of times there's creative financing, and when you look at it, some of that is kind of creative. So, it was a good resource just to kind of see maybe where they are
Versus
where we are. Yeah. And so, but I think that with this meeting, we've got a good step forward, and I think that we have a firm, where we're headed and what we need to do, and I think we'll do it. We'll do it. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that we'll get it done.
Yeah, and as far as meetings go, and I know Peter can attest to this and David, but the only exception with the numbers that the mayor was talking about is New Bern. They have like only 45 chairs in that room, and there's 20 communities represented. So that's one where we can't take the whole group, but whoever's most interested in that, just to clarify that meeting that's coming up. It's kind of hard.
That's on the 19th?
That's the one that's the end of August.
To answer a question, Peter, you asked earlier, you don't throw everybody into the one thing. So you're thinking about, do you do you ask the commissioners which two want to be the lead on this versus other things, is to me the appropriate way to act. It really.
I agree.
And it would be the same on the board. It might be that not all 5 people actually want to be a face. They'd be okay being a body occasionally, but they don't want to be a face. So which ones want to be a face, and then how does it get divided up? To help. It's all about help at some level.
Can I just make a comment? So we're talking about two types of people. You basically got the bus riders that gather up when you need to go to Raleigh, and the disciples. And I think that your disciples comes from this group. You know, I mean, you got staff, but your disciples come from this group, because there's a credibility aspect whenever you go interface. You say, I'm the pro tem from Holden Beach. I'm commissioner so-and-so. I'm a member of the Beach and Inlet Protection Board. So there's a credibility aspect of it. So I think that your first string disciples has to come from this cadre of folks. Just my comment.
Absolutely agree. And you guys can decide amongst yourselves, and we'll decide amongst ourselves.
Well, I think you guys have a lot more clout than,
Yeah, but for you to do a lot of homework, a lot of.
From a process point of view, I mean, I'm just trying, for us to get started, I know, three or more of us can't get together at the same time. I know we can all go off individually and work on things, but.
Welcome to the way
I
we
mean,
have to
how the
operate.
heck are we gonna get anything done if we can't have like a workshop? I guess we can have
You
a
can
workshop
have
kind of thing, we
workshops.
just have to,
They have to be public.
yeah,
You can have workshops, of course.
okay.
I know. It's difficult.
It's a hurdle for me. I'll get over it. But it's a hurdle.
Welcome to our world.
So would the two boards like to see staff send out dates via email of upcoming meetings, or would the two boards like that as a presentation at the BOC meeting?
I'd like to see an email come out.
I think
Yes.
an email's fine. Are we ready for the next agenda?
I have one more question.
Yeah.
The lady that was supposed to be in at the meeting, from the Corps, that didn't show, what exactly was she gonna talk about?
She's going to talk about one of those legs on our stool of sand management
Okay.
that we've just
Okay.
hadn't been hitting our head on. And Mayor Holden doesn't know this yet, but we've got a draft of a letter for the mayor to send to the colonel, requesting an update on that. We've exhausted our capability, or staff's capability to do that. And I don't know if he'll sign it or not, but that's going to be my recommendation, to have the mayor to ask the colonel for an update.
did we ever hear what happened to her, or she just,
I think that in these days of mobile device communication dating, the term is we got ghosted. Well, that's what I feel like anyway.
Gotcha.
So the reasons why we ghosted, that's your question.
Don't even know why you
We don't
got
know.
ghosted.
We don't know.
That's why you got ghosted.
What else was she gonna talk about? I saw her, she had some, her name was on, I think, a 2011 Corps report that I read. Was that an update? Because it said it was an update. Was that an update from that report, or?
We
was it
just
something totally new?
want to know what the viability of the 50-year project is. You know, is it going to take another 50 years, or is it 50 years old? And you know, we need to put a bow on it and look at it in the rearview mirror. Is it viable? You know, should we even consider it part of our strategy in our sand comprehensive
But
plan?
this is something that's trying to get resurrected, correct?
We just want to know if it's even possible.
'Cause
We don't know
She
where
probably
it
doesn't know the
is.
answer to that.
Because remember, our hope was that some of the effort that went into that environmental impact statement, all the work that went in for the groin that isn't going for the groin, but are there pieces of it that can be used? But if there's nothing going to happen for 5 years, then we're
Move
just gonna
on.
be out of date.
Gonna be
We're just gonna be
dated.
out of date, and let's just,
Just move on.
instead of saving it, throw it away. Well, electronically save it. But,
And if it's not viable, then the commissioners can tell Fran and it's not a part of his report anymore. You know, it's not a section in there. He doesn't deal with it, so.
And we cannot have a false hope
right.
pinned
Federal
on
law.
something that
There's something
isn't
to rely on.
viable, that it's a pie in the sky, that we should move on. That's all we're trying to do. We're trying to bring it to closure
Yeah.
or to bring it back into focus. That's all I want to know.
Okay.
That's the dates for.
Are we ready to move on in the agenda now,
Yes, yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay, assuming we need a chair and a vice chair.
Yes. I would like to nominate Vicki Myers as the chair of our committee. You can ask us all those in favor?
He seconded.
Oh,
He
second.
seconded, okay, great.
Discussion?
You bet.
Isn't that what you usually say now?
You declare Vicky by acclamation to be your chair.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, then we need to have a nomination for vice chair.
Yes. I'd like to nominate Mike to be vice chair of the committee.
Good job, Mr.
Yeah, good job.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Okay, wait, I have a couple of questions. I read in the duties of the chair that there needs to be a monthly report to the BOC. What is the preferred format for that? Do you need it just written, or would you like it verbally as well?
I'd like to evolve that, if I may, that requirement in there for the chair to report to the board, because it seems like to me that the chair might be making a report on items from the meeting that the Inlet board itself hasn't reviewed the minutes on. Does that make sense? And that it may be better for just the minutes of the Inlet board to go to the commissioners instead of having the chair to write a report.
This was in their, it's in ordinance. so-
It's,
I'm just saying
yeah.
that's in a,
and it actually comes via the town clerk. The report goes to the town clerk for inclusion in the following month's Board of Commissioners agenda package, so. Yes, it does not come directly to the commissioners, it goes via the town clerk.
Okay, let's vote that for a while, see how.
But that report becomes the minutes in a way.
Well, we would still have minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So you would just have to know that the report that comes to you would be, it would not be, it would be coming from me, it would not be blessed by the board yet. Does that make sense? But you get copies of all the minutes too, correct?
Correct.
Yes. I understand.
I'm
what-
gonna
yeah.
raise a caution flag
Yeah.
here. Years ago, back in the 70s, there was a major problem with a misunderstanding whenever a report was given that wasn't approved by those that were present. It was just a simple thing, not a personal thing, it was just a simple mistake. And I would just caution until it has the blessings of the board for something to be presented as a position of that board that worries me.
I agree with the mayor here, particularly because of the way it's expressed here, that it goes to the town clerk for inclusion in the following month's Board of Commissioners agenda package, because then that's a public document that the entire town has. So if there is an inadvertent error, then it becomes much more difficult to undo it.
Be like the president.
I If you guys are gonna be meeting, if you're gonna be meeting monthly, things are only gonna, it's not that you can't give a call to a commissioner and say, we have this really, like, great idea that I wanna communicate to you right away, because I think we need to start thinking about it. But I think if you're gonna have something in writing that goes into the packet, it needs to have been blessed by the whole.
You know, one simple thing is to send out the minutes to your members and ask for feedback. You can't take official
No, you
motion.
can't do that now, right?
Can't do
That's,
that.
Yeah, that's not a good
You
idea.
can't send the notes
I
out.
mean, then when they,
Okay,
yeah,
I
that,
stand correct.
We had our training on
Okay.
that already.
Yeah,
That was a great idea, though.
It was a good idea.
Welcome to town.
well,
that was in Noel's presentation that you'll hear on the
You could schedule
10th.
a public meeting only to review minutes 2 weeks after. I mean, you could meet twice a month if you want to have a meeting. But I'm just saying, this is
Could you
part
send
of
it to
this.
one of us at a time?
That's completely going against the open meetings intent. That as clerk I say no. Yeah, that's not. That's the whole purpose is that the whole public gets to see what you're doing and how you're doing it. So if you're doing
Feels
stuff
like
in the
you
background,
shouldn't
that's
register.
I have a
Or it
question
feels
for
like
you.
we should just submit the
Whenever
minutes. How are we gonna do it?
Well, then even if she submits, if we submit the minutes, we haven't approved.
We
the
still haven't
minutes.
approved them
You have to
yet.
approve the minutes or report around the minutes, right? So you're gonna be a month
In arrears.
in arrears. Good.
Unless we have our meeting, take the minutes and approve them right there and then.
Yeah, but I'm the clerk to that board, and that's gonna be a problem. Minutes take time to do.
We'll always be in arrears a month.
Yeah, and there's an advantage to waiting and letting it stew and thinking about, that we've learned over the past couple of years. We're still trying to learn some of the time.
Madam Clerk,
yes, sir.
does this board receive a packet from you before a town meeting?
Mhm.
Does that packet have any minutes in it that haven't been approved?
Yeah, the draft minutes. That they're talking about a draft report and making changes on it. You guys can't make change to my minutes in the
Yes, we can.
well in the meeting, but you can't come back to me before the meeting.
Right
And,
before we-
Right, so we
Yes.
get a package every month and it has the minutes in it from the previous meeting
Do you see
that
what
haven't
I'm
been
trying to
approved
get?
yet.
if Chrissy sent out or David, whoever is writing the minutes, you could put draft right across. I mean, you could even put that in the background if you're trying to. If time is of an essence and you don't want to wait, you could put out the draft minutes with the word draft on
So
them.
what I'm trying to do is to clean up what maybe I said and things I read into. You send them out in advance, they haven't been approved, nor have they been discussed.
Correct.
And I see no different
Between that and
than
that, yeah.
what I suggested.
Well,
There's
we're
a
talking-
big difference.
yeah.
There's a big difference.
No, if there's interaction, there is.
No, I
Then
disagree
what's
with
the
that,
difference?
because they're the Board of Commissioners meetings.
Oh,
Those
yeah.
are their
It's
minutes that
our
are be
minutes
put in
that-
your
that are
agenda.
draft that we're reviewing, whereas
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm trying to say that she sends us our Board of Commissioners minutes that are proposed to be approved at that upcoming meeting. Right?
Mhm.
I'm saying she sends the proposed minutes to her board, just like you do to this board.
Well,
We
that's
don't
not
give
what
her
the. I don't
feedback
think.
until the next meeting.
Yeah, I don't think that's what the. I think the intent is to get it in your packet. So if I'm giving you their draft minutes in our packet, I don't.
I am not communicating. I'm not talking about that. I'm trying to give her,
But the difference is the minutes that go to us for the meeting go out to the public at large. They aren't limited just to the Board of Commissioners, where their minutes are going to be limited just to.
Their minutes go to the world at large too.
but what I'm trying to say is, what is different? What is different they're not approving it, they're not doing anything that we're not doing. If she sends her,
You're not even allowed to discuss public policy. The majority of the people aren't allowed to discuss public policy unless it's in it. So if you're going to send the minutes out, that's a discussion and regurgitation of what was discussed, right?
I'm still not communicating what I'm trying
I
to
know what
say
he's saying. He's saying the draft is just informational, that it's,
to
you're
her
gonna-
board.
right.
That's fine. And we do that, like when P and Z,
Well, that's what
they got their packets already, and their packets include the minutes for their
Previous.
review before the meeting. But I think it's the next step, if that's what you're talking about, the next step of them giving me draft minutes to put in your
Oh,
packet.
no, I'm not talking about that at
But
all.
they can definitely approve them. I think she was asking more how we're getting the information to you guys.
No.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah, but definitely they can, we always, all the different clerks send them to their boards prior to, so they could approve them. And at that point, like right now, if you looked at my minutes, you would have no idea what I'm writing because I'm just writing notes. So this isn't public record. But once I put this into a format where it's a draft minutes, it's public record. Draft minutes are public record, yes.
All right, let me, bear with me if you would. All right, assuming that maybe now we have a blessing for her to send her rough draft to her board members only.
But are you talking about the report or the
No.
minutes? I'm confused,
No.
honestly.
No, the chair of the committee does not send minutes to board members.
All right, who is?
The clerk to that board is the town
That's
manager.
you. So
Okay.
you don't have any to send.
I prepared minutes for the board, that board, to consider at their next meeting for approval.
So they don't see them until the next meeting.
They would get it in the agenda package prior to the next meeting, whatever meeting that may be.
Just like
I mean,
we do
that's-
for the commissioners.
I mean, just like Heather does it for the commissioners. The clerk prepares the commissioner's agenda or the minutes from the July meeting. Your minutes will go in your packages for the August meeting.
Okay, so
They're
what
draft minutes until the commissioners act on them in August.
I got that.
I mean-
But what, I'm still trying to beat this to death, I'm sorry. Whenever you have your meeting, you take the minutes, okay, you write them up and get them in order
Right.
to put in their package to go to them. The timing, now they're not taking any action on what you give them until their official meeting, right?
The next meeting.
The lag, how much lag time is there between whenever you give it to them?
It's a month. The meetings are a month apart.
But how much before their meeting do they get it back? That's what I'm trying to.
It's a
Two,
week.
it's only two, it has to be two
Okay.
business days for the
So
other
what I'm
board.
trying to address is her, until she has approved minutes, they're not approved minutes
Right.
at their meeting. But she has to, if you being this group is looking for any kind of interaction, she's not gonna be able to say they're approved minutes. But if she's gonna have any kind of report given at our meeting, she needs to have an idea whether or not she's on track. So whenever you give her then the rough draft minutes, shouldn't she have some assurance that her personal understanding of what you've written is in order? Or are we just not gonna let her report until she has formally approved minutes?
My point was that a report by the chair is probably not appropriate, that it should come in the form of the minutes from that board. I'm not trying to
But that would be, wouldn't that be a 2-month delay then?
Maybe.
I stick them in your mailboxes with planning and zoning, board of adjustment, parks and rec. As soon as they're approved, they send, that clerk sends those to me and you guys get them in your mailbox. So we wouldn't be talking about agenda packets at that point. I think if you change it, I think it would be, when are you guys meeting? It would
The
be,
fourth Thursday of the month.
and we're the 3rd, so you would get it a week after our board meeting in your mailboxes here at Town Hall. Just a copy of the minutes if we changed it that way.
Up there.
So they need
So there's
a
Once any board
there's a
approves
5-week
that.
delay.
5-week delay.
Yeah, once any board approves minutes, I
That's
stick
what
it
I'm
in the
trying-
mailbox.
Trying to get some movement to close that gap. You say there's not any way to close it. Unless they have a special meeting.
Every month too.
If we do a special meeting, we have to approve the minutes at that meeting? Is that what you just said? If we decide to do a special meeting between our scheduled meetings.
We have minutes for that meeting.
we did minutes
You would
for
have
that
minutes,
meeting
right.
too.
Right.
Will we approve the minutes from the previous meeting? or no?
Please don't try to set up a special meeting
Just to
as
do
the
that.
organizational structure for how this board's gonna do its business as far as approving minutes. That's bad business.
So, are you guys gonna amend the ordinance?
If the Board of Commissioners would like that as an agenda item, I could come up with a proposal based on what you're saying. And you had mentioned, Peter, that you wanted letter A changed to Board of Commissioners instead of town. I mean, we can amend the ordinance if that's what you choose, or however you want to do it.
We're not telling you what the report's supposed to be. So if the report is the minutes, let's see what that looks like. So it gives us flexibility as well.
I'm gonna tell you, as whatever position I may have, I'm not really excited about getting 5-week-old information.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, just put a thing in my box and I'll read it somewhere or other. I think it's pretty.
And the point is, if I want the information, I'll go sit in the audience like everybody else, get it right there.
The one thing that you might want to consider, and you might yell at me for this too, just maybe at the end of each meeting, the board can come up with like 3 or 4 points that they approve right in the meeting that the chairman can go and talk about instead of approving the whole minutes. She could just have like 4 what the board votes at the end of each meeting. I want to tell the board this, and that. The board says that's a fine document, and that's so it's not a whole set of minutes. It's just a few.
Report, you can find a report that you want, you know.
Before bullet points.
And get everybody to agree on it at
Correct.
the meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good,
Because I mean, I think if it's something, it'd be like a Wally report at a meeting where he takes 2 minutes, less than 5 minutes. It's not an every month meeting of an hour to talk
or we
about
don't,
to the
you know,
board.
you can do it by email, you don't have to have a presentation of it.
Right, I could just stick it in the package, but
Puts
right.
a lot of pressure on your chairperson to make sure that chairperson totally 100% represents the intent of the board verbally. When you start standing up in front of a crowd of people, possibly TV or newspapers there, sometimes it's a little more difficult than one thinks.
See how it works. Try it, yeah.
Okay.
It really means just closing out a meeting with, are we all in agreement that we want to communicate the following 3 points to the commissioners for the next meeting and make sure everybody agrees? Or that you have a majority agreement, but it's a formal closing of a meeting to get agreement.
But a great point. Maybe make it was kind of,
Well,
Make sure
put it
you-
in writing and,
Yeah.
okay.
that was one of my questions.
So am I correct, I missed this point, that somebody from the town will be doing our minutes in the meeting? Is that, okay.
Works.
And then our next meeting will be August the 23rd, and we'll continue on the 4th Thursday at 10 o'clock. And do we have a location? Are we still going to be at the EOC?
It'll be here.
Okay.
4th Thursday?
We said 4th Thursday, that's when you guys wanted to do it, is that correct? At 10? Does that work well? Because it seemed like that was conflict.
We have camp in here over the summer. You won't be meeting until camp's over, so you guys should be fine.
Okay.
Camp's over, I assume, like Labor Day?
It's the last week of
It's-
August.
Camp's over the second week of August.
Yeah, the
Okay.
school.
So that won't be an issue now.
Mayor hadn't
until
been
next summer.
successful in stretching the school year out to start too early.
Now,
It's
man,
his
for
fault.
all that made on that one.
Yeah, they don't have some vacation.
We've lost 2 weeks of prime rest. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.